Hello and welcome to a new type of video for me. I haven't done these in the past, so hopefully you'll see it as something new and different, because hopefully there are things that I do that are the same in all my videos that you still enjoy and understand why I have to do them. But also I hope that when I do a video there's something in there that surprises you or teaches you something. So for this video I wanted to have it where it would be a way for us to get to know a character before, or a figure before we actually get into the figure that we're actually going to be talking about. So right now I'm thinking this is a different way of doing it, and the reason why is because sometimes we get a figure or a character that is so different than the previous incarnations that we might want to do a prequel for the information that's come before the information that or the thoughts that I have for the figure that we're going to be looking at. So I hope you enjoyed this prequel, and the title might be changed in the future, but right now we're going to have a prequel. Before we get to know Breaker from Rise of Cobra toy line, let's try and get to know Breaker a little bit more from the information I was able to find. Also, I wanted to show this pack, not only to show you that it has another version of Breaker. I'm not sure if this is what he looks like in the actual comic. This is issue 9. Well, we have Breaker here, but it's got his first name, and then his code name, and then his last name that I think is Kibby? Kibbey is how I would want to say that. But there's another figure in here that me and Dave were just talking about recently, if he remembers, and that's this guy right here, Cobra Commander. So let's get you a little bit closer look at, and I hope we'll find interesting whether or not you're a G.I. Joe collector or not, is that the idea with these comic packs, even though this came out in 2005 is what it says on the back, so it may have been 2006, because sometimes even with the date that they put on the back of the package, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the date that it's listed. Now, with the figures here, the idea is they were trying to recreate the way that the characters would look in the comic. So here we have figures for Breaker and Scarlet that look to me like something that you would expect out of the 1980s. So they've got molds of the molds that they would have had in 1980s. But the thing that's interesting is not only do they look very close to what maybe they looked like in the 1980s, but the bodies are that type of mold, but the heads are not. They gave us the old molds of the bodies, but then gave us heads that were supposed to look closer to the way that they look in the packaging. Because if you go back and you look at any of the figures for the 1980s, very early on, they didn't what's a nice way of saying it? They were not the most good looking, I guess, even though I don't have a problem with if there's not a good looking, but I just meant, like, here Scarlet looks like she's got feminine features, and if you look at the Scarlet from the 1980s, you'll see that she's not so feminine looking. And again, they say that that's because they wanted to have females, but they didn't feel like boys would buy the female characters if it looked like a girl. So, but nowadays most adult collectors would like to have the female characters, but again, we're always told that female characters don't sell as well as the male counterparts. So they did the remolds and the heads. Now, the other thing I think is interesting is with Cobra Commander here, you'll see that he's in this kind of translucent, kind of aqua, or maybe evergreen or topaz, I'm not sure how you guys would see that, but he is supposed to be clear, and the idea is, I haven't read this comic in a long time, but he's supposed to be a hologram, so that's why he's that color. Now the thing that I think is interesting about this, besides all the other stuff, is that even though this figure is supposed to be a reinterpretation of what he looks like in the comic, what we have here is kind of a hybrid, because the head has been used before, and then the rest of the body might look like, and even to me it looked like, it was just a remold of a 1991 or a 1993 Cobra Commander. But reading from the site that we all love, it says Cobra Commander version 23 was made from the head originally used to make Cobra Commander version 18 from 2004. The lower arms originally used to make Roadblock from 1984. So even though most of this mold looks like it's from 1991 or 1993, they actually used different arms on this version of Cobra Commander. But the rest of the body, the chest, the waist, the legs, and the upper arms were originally used to make Cobra Commander version 5 in 1991. So I think that's really cool, because if I hadn't looked it up, I would have totally assumed that this was a 1991 remold of the character. But the other thing that's also interesting to me is that we have Breaker here, where he looks like he's more like what he would have looked like in the 1980s, or maybe even in the comic. Then we have Scarlet, where she's got more of an updated look to me than what she would have looked like in the comic. But here, with this Cobra Commander, that's not what Cobra Commander looked like in the comic. That is actually, and I know this mold's been used before, but I thought you guys might find this interesting, seeing him look like that. I'm not really much of a fan of red and black when it's used in this way, but here we have a Spy Troops G.I. Joe versus Cobra, and you'll see that that's actually the look that they have on the package there. So kind of interesting that they decided to go with the Cobra Commander that looks nothing like he did in the comic. Since we showed you this Cobra Commander, I thought you might find it interesting to see this hybrid logo there. They have G.I. Joe, but it's more of like what I would expect from the 1960s logo of G.I. Joe, kind of mixed in with the real American hero red, white, and blue. And they actually did put this on a few vehicles too. And as much as I do like the Cobra symbol, I like the updated G.I. Joe logos and everything, I really, something about me, just because I'm such a real American hero from the 1980s fan, it just didn't mix well with me. So I'm not sure how you guys think about that, but I did think you would find that kind of cool. And since we showed you this Cobra Commander, I did want to show you this logo that was on the package.